In today's video, I'm going to be preparing the pie crust from scratch from my old school Better Homes and Gardens cookbook. Most people know Amiri Baraka as a controversial poet laureate, activist, and self-proclaimed Black nationalist. But one defining event had nothing to do with the man he appeared to be to the rest of the world, and everything to do with the kind of father he was to his 8 children. On August 12, 2003, the entire Baraka family took a blow when they lost the youngest member to a senseless act of domestic violence. 2 beautiful lights went out when Shani Baraka and her friend Rayshawn Holmes were found shot, dead. One author mentioned in my American Lit class is Amiri Baraka. Although he was quite controversial in his public life, he seems to have had a softer side where he was a husband, father, and a huge fan of Black soul food. In fact, he was once quoted as saying to a friend, "Sweet potato pies," a good friend of mine asked recently, "do they taste anything like pumpkin?" Negative. They taste more like memories of the South. So in today's dinner crime video, I'll actually be preparing his favorite dessert, sweet potato pie, while telling you about the absolutely heinous crime to which he's connected. While he didn't actually commit any crimes himself, that I'm aware of, he came pretty close a couple times though. He spent many of his final years on Earth thoroughly angry, as most parents would be, over the death of his youngest daughter, Shani Baraka. Let's get baking. Born Everett Leroy Jones in 1934 in Newark, New Jersey, poet, Black nationalist, and controversial activist, Jones changed his name to Amamu Amiri Baraka after the assassination of Malcolm X in 1965. Baraka led the Black arts movement, which encouraged Black writers to take control of the economic power of their own work. While Baraka's work is known for its Black nationalist tonality, he actually started his literary career in the Beats poetry movement in Greenwich Village, along with his then-wife, poet Hetty Cohen Jones. Together, the artistic couple had 2 daughters, Lisa and Kelly. His connection to other literary greats of this time, such as Langston Hughes, allowed him to be an intermediary between these Harlem Renaissance artists and the beat poets that came up in my lessons, like Jack Kerouac and Allen Ginsberg. For many years, Baraka also had an extramarital affair with fellow poet and editor of their arts and literature magazine, Diane DePrima. The affair resulted in the birth of their daughter, Dominique DePrima, in 1962. The pair also got into a bit of trouble with the FBI over the publication of a William Burroughs piece called Roosevelt After the Inauguration, which was deemed an obscene piece of literature. I'm not usually one to defend the actions of the FBI, but Burroughs does go so far as to refer to the Supreme Court as, quote, purple-assed baboons that were all appointed by then-President Roosevelt. I'll have to check with my resident lawyer as to whether or not that's an actual crime, but I can see why, by 1960 standards, that might have been considered obscene. In 1966, Baraka married his second wife, Sylvia Robinson, who later adopted the name Amina Baraka. Amina had 2 daughters from a previous marriage, Vera and Wanda Wilson. Together, the couple had 5 children, Obalaji, Raz, Amiri, Ahi, and Shani Baraka. At this point, it seemed as though Baraka was settling down and really becoming a family man. But his wife Amina was and is a feisty, outspoken, determined woman in her own right, and she stood by her man for better or worse, and Baraka continued to piss people off for years to come. He was repeatedly accused of being a communist, sexist, homophobic, and racist. Somehow, in spite of this, Baraka became New Jersey's first poet laureate in 2002 and 2003. But after he delivered his poem, Somebody Blew Up America, in which he accused the U.S. government and Israel of orchestrating September 11th, just 10 months after the attacks, there were immediate calls for his resignation. If you've never heard of or seen Baraka perform this poem, I do recommend that you check out the full poem. I'll link the full video in the description box. Then Governor Jim Greavy tried to remove Baraka from the post, but could not legally do so. Instead, the New Jersey State Legislature abolished the position, effectively removing Baraka from the post. Their daughter Shani was born on October 23, 1971, in Newark, New Jersey. Later in life, Shani became a beloved school teacher and basketball coach and shared a home with her half-sister Wanda. Trouble in their house truly began when Wanda's ex-husband, James Coleman, aka Ibn Alamin Pasha, decided that he didn't like the idea of his ex-wife finding happiness after their marriage ended. Wanda moved on and had a new man by the name of James Hill Jr. 2 separate restraining orders were issued against Pasha prior to the murders, but neither was ever served to him. Not after a domestic violence incident, and not when he allegedly pointed a gun at Wanda and threatened her. Pasha started doing some really petty things, like gradually escalated over time. He'd call her phone 10 to 20 times a day, show up at her house and threaten her. There were so many incidents that the 2008 court record I read didn't even bother to list them all. Basically, he was a bully and a nuisance. In June of 2003, Wanda decided to escape from Pasha's harassment by going to stay with her new boo, James Hill Jr. She gave a cousin the keys to her house, instructions on how to care for her pool, and permission to use her car to get back and forth. Pasha actually went so far as to break out the windows on Wanda's car, slash her tires, and set the whole car ablaze just so that Wanda's cousin couldn't get back and forth to her home to clean the pool. According to a court record, on August 8, 2003, Wanda Wilson and James Hill Jr. went to Las Vegas. The night before they left, Wanda gave Hill's 17-year-old son a key to the house and asked him to watch over the dog while they were gone. August 12th, Hill's son arrived at the house with his girlfriend and 9-year-old cousin. All of the lights on the second floor of the house were on. Hill's son and his girlfriend went to check upstairs, and the young cousin went to check on the dog in the basement. This poor 9-year-old child was the one who made the initial, gruesome discovery of 2 dead bodies in the basement. He came upstairs screaming. Hill's son called his father in Las Vegas, and Wilson called the police. They responded to the house and found the bodies of Baraka and Holmes, both of whom had been shot to death. Pasha was nowhere to be found. He skipped town to hide out with a friend in North Carolina, but eventually returned to New Jersey to turn himself in. This friend told police that Pasha had been with him the entire time, the weekend of the murders. Subsequent investigation, however, produced several witnesses who could place Pasha in the area at the time of the murders. Holmes had owned a Toyota Land Cruiser, but the vehicle was missing at her death. The police managed to locate her missing vehicle by tracking her E-ZPass transponder, which showed the vehicle move through New Jersey down to the Fort McHenry Tunnel in Maryland. It was eventually discovered about 4 months later in Virginia at a spot very close to a Greyhound bus terminal. The bus company records showed that a one-way ticket to Winston-Salem had been purchased by Rob Carpenter on August 12, 2003. The friend with whom Pasha had been staying in North Carolina and who eventually drove him back to New Jersey was Robert Carpenter. On August 16, 2003, thousands of people attended Shani's funeral at the Metropolitan Baptist Church in Newark, which just goes to show the amount of love and respect the Baraka family enjoys among the people of Newark for their dedication, commitment, and struggle in defense of people's civil and political rights. A jury found Pasha guilty of 3 counts of terroristic threats, 2 counts of false imprisonment, kidnapping, 2 counts of stalking, 1 count of possession of a weapon for an unlawful purpose, 3 counts of criminal mischief, 1 count of burglary, 1 count of theft, and 2 counts of murder. The trial court sentenced Pasha to 168 years in prison. The sentence included 2 consecutive life terms for the murder convictions. Of course, Pasha appealed his convictions and sentence, which he's allowed to do, but after reviewing the record, the judge upheld the convictions and sentence. In May of 2017, Shani Baraka Women's Research Center opened in Newark. This state-of-the-art, multifaceted agency, which is run by the city of Newark, was developed in Shani's honor to be a one-stop shop for victims of domestic violence. The project was spearheaded by none other than Shani's big brother and Newark's mayor, Ras J. Baraka. Just as an aside, I got a chance to meet Amiri Baraka when he visited the college I attended for undergrad. He was there as part of an effort to bring more diversity to the theater and art scene by using the main stage for plays by various minority playwrights. The actors performed Baraka's play Dutchman, which you could probably guess is a pretty controversial play that depicts the murder of a black man by a white woman on a subway train. Following the play, if I remember correctly, he performed one of his poems for us, and I could feel his rage. It was a very different feeling than the one I got reading the following poem he wrote for Shani, entitled Listening Again to Shani Laughing. What loss in your life, like losing life? For your life is touched with all lives. What is closer than the life you give? What loss greater than the life you gave? The life inside. What loss is deeper? What pain more horrible? None, there is none. Shani had a perfect idea of herself. She knew exactly what herself, her perfect little self, she'd be, and she beat it. I tell you, evil is the reverse of what is live. Not just death, but something that can never live. Not the thought of dying, but of never having been alive. That is the craziness that haunts things that want your life. Thank you for joining me in the Professor's Kitchen today. I hope you enjoyed this true crime story and watching me make this special sweet potato pie. If so, don't forget to check out the full recipe in the description box below. Like this video, share it with a friend, and subscribe to the channel for more videos. Also, feel free to leave me a comment below if there is an author you'd like to hear me talk about or a dish that you'd like to see me prepare. Ciao for now.